Yes. Okay, I'm Cristine, and this is
Hi, I'm Alessandra.
and we are both senior service designers here at Denkwerk. I'm here for about 1 year and a half.
I've been here for 5 years now.
So we have, come together from different journeys and working together now. And we decided to host this uXchange here at Denkwerk. And this is our topic today, what we want to talk with you about, sharing a little bit about our experience and also thinking beyond the user experience. Maybe most of you work as a user experience designer, and we are going to bring a little bit about our knowledge and our experience with service design and how this could help you to zoom out a little bit out of the user perspective to the service perspective. But yeah, let's first start with the short story.
Yes, so we wanted to start with the short story just to bring you to our mindset. So imagine it's a nice day, you wake up and your postal delivery app has a notification for you and it says the package you've been expecting for days is arriving this morning. So you think it's good, I have time, I'm home, I'm just gonna sit here and wait for my package, nothing can go wrong. And then time goes by and it's already noon and you get a new notification on your app and it's just telling you, we tried to deliver it, but you were not home, so good luck next time. But you know, you have like this, you're really angry at that, it kills your mood, but you have this nice app and it tells you tomorrow you can pick up your package at the post office around the corner. And then?
Yeah, so this was a little bit introduction of a story, the story of experience that the user is having. And maybe most of you are working as a user experience designer and focusing on the digital product itself that this user just use to get to know about the notification and get to know about the package. So the experience itself with the product was until now great, right? So you did deliver a great job to the user. So you're focusing on designing a good user experience for that project and provide meaningful and relevant experience to the users. So if you just zoom in that moment, you did a great job and things are working fine. But we know that, as she just mentioned, the experience with the digital product was going well, but the frustration was already there. There was things happening on the service that were not working out, even though the application itself was working fine. And maybe that resonates with you, that you might work with something that looks great, it's really useful, there's meaning, but it's still things are going wrong. And that's what we want to talk today a little bit, how to help zoom out from this perspective or just looking into the user experience, zooming out a little bit further. And you can also then start thinking about designing for the user journey, right? That would be the second stage of zooming out. So first, you're just designing for the user experience with that digital product, one single touch point on the journey of the user. Once the user goes to the post office, there will be other touch points there, other points of contact with that service. There will be people online. There will be someone on the counter that maybe it's a nice person, maybe it's not so nice person. Maybe there is a machine, a self-service machine that you don't know how to use it. And it's another digital application that you have to learn how to use it. Maybe then at the end you were successful, you get your package, you go home happy. Maybe things go even worse and then you have to call somebody else, a call center, and so on. So just looking into the user experience of one touch point, it's not enough. Now you have to understand what is the context around that experience and what are other touch points and channels that the user experienced during the journey. And today we also then go a little bit further. Maybe some of you are already working with the journey, and then go a little bit further for designing for the service experience. So the experience of that person, it's not the only part of the service. We also have the experience of the employees, right? The people that you don't see when you go to that post office, feel behind the stage. So there's also the people that they're delivering the package, people that are maybe counting the packages, people that are doing the customer support. So everything is an ecosystem. No? And then when you focus with just the user itself, you lose contact with all that. So here we'll be designing for the service experience, meaning you're designing for the user on the front stage. On service design, we use this analogy of what happens front stage is what people see. A little bit analogy of a concert. No? When you go to a concert, you see the front stage, you see the musicians, but there's things happening backstage. No? And this is the value to the organization. And everything is a service and everything counts on that experience. Yeah, and that's actually where service design comes along. It's a discipline that helps to design service. Yeah, putting that simply in that way, service design is the practice of designing services. So if we think product design and graphic design is the same, you're designing something. So the service design is designing services. And it's a discipline that was kind of started around 25 years ago, actually here in Germany, in Cologne, we could say. And around that time, there was a discussion on the design field that was this significant need in the service industry for professional and systematic approach to the development and design of service, because services have been around for a long time, but the design of like really systematic design of it was not yet there. And our economy is rounded on services. Most of the world today have their economies based on services. So why not to have designers focusing on designing those services? And here's like a definition of it. What is service design in that way? So service design helps to innovate, so create new or improve existing services to make them more useful and desirable for users. But at the same time, as well as efficient and effective for organizations. So as we talked before, it's thinking about the front stage, what users connect with and interact with, but also everything that happens backstage, the employee experience and the business impact. And therefore it's a holistic. Now you have to think about many factors. It's also multidisciplinary because you need a lot of people involved, otherwise you need all the expertise, and is integrative because you need everyone working together to accomplish that, because services are complex things.
And we would like to present to you a couple of the service design principles that we think could be useful for anyone working on digital or non-digital touchpoints, to consider a bit of the broader spectrum and not only the user experience. So I think it's clear from what Chris said so far, services are human-centered. And what does it mean? It means, of course, you're focusing on your user, so it's user-centered, but you have to go beyond that. So there's a lot of stakeholders involved in your service, and you should think of the experience that all of them have when providing and consuming your service. Oh yeah, side note. And you can also think, of course, beyond that. So for instance, you could think about non-human actors that might be affected by your service. It's contextual. So as you've seen in the case of the post office, there's a whole context of things happening around it. And it's important to consider all of this when you're designing for services. So keep multiple perspectives in mind. What's going on beyond the user experience? What's the business doing? What are the processes? Who are other stakeholders involved? What's the business strategy for the company that's delivering the service? And how can you combine everything in a good experience for everyone? It's sequential, so services always happen as a sequence of interactions, I like to describe it. And that means that you need to think of it from before you start the service until afterwards. So if you think, for instance, I'm going to a restaurant today. Maybe before you go to the restaurant, you're going to look online for nice food around your area, right? So this is already a touch point you have with the service before you even start going to it. And it continues afterwards. So maybe you had a very delicious meal and you say, it's nice, I want to write a review, or I want to save this restaurant for later. And it's important to think about all these touch points when you're considering services, because you can then orchestrate this journey and create a seamless experience over all phases and all touch points of it. It's collaborative. So you need to talk to a lot of people. You know, if you're doing UX, you're going to go and talk to your users. And if you're doing services, you're going to talk to your users and to your stakeholders and to people who might be indirectly involved in your service. And it's really important to bring this know-how to your process as well. So it's not only about doing research, but it's about collaborating with these people and co-creating the services you're offering. And it's iterative, but I think that's something that everyone working with products or digital services know, right? The more you test it, the more you prove it, the more you validate it, the better it will be when you implement it. And we would also like to show you a couple of service design tools that we think could be really useful in your process when you're trying to zoom out. So the first one, I think most of you might know, is it's a customer journey. So here you're focusing on your user and on the steps and the moments they have when interacting with your service or with your product. And it's always about looking at the experience of this specific actor over time. So what's happening? You can do it for a current state, you can do it for a future state you're imagining or designing to. And it's a really good tool to understand what are the key moments in the experience you're offering. What are pains or what are opportunities for your company based on the insights you're gathering there. And if you want to zoom out a bit and consider more than just your user, you can use a system map and focus on all the different stakeholders and touch points that might be involved in the product you're designing. So you put your user in the center, and then you expand your view and think of what interactions are happening, what role are people playing in the service, how things are connected. And if you want to go even deeper and make a big zoom out, you can do a service blueprint. It's basically a combination of a user journey and a vision of the processes that are happening in parallel to it. So you have your user experience on the top and the steps and key moments. And afterwards, or below them, you see what's happening on the front stage and on the back stage. So are there other touch points? What are processes that are happening that your user are maybe not seeing, but are influencing their experience? And this is, for us, the biggest view you can have of a service.
So yeah, in practice, how it works. For example, if we think, as you just mentioned here, would be like a blueprint of a service provider. The user journey is happening on top. So there's the before, during, and after moment of the journey. Maybe the user will start the journey looking into a billboard and seeing this advertisement of a certain digital product. He would register and then start using the application. On the backstage, there's the people involved. Maybe there's a software application or something that employees have to also interact with. For that interaction to exist. And then later, maybe the person will receive a newsletter or reviewed that service in social media. So this is happening like on the front stage, on the user level. And for that to happen, you need the service provider to act on it, right? So you need the service provider to do something. He needs to book the billboard. He needs to prepare the advertisement. He needs to have the digital product in place. You need to develop the code. You need to have the employees there. So you have to hire people to be an employer of that organization. You have to have the software that they will use, and so on. So this is the service provider. There's many activities happening that influence the experience of the user. And here we put it Denkwerk there as well. So we as the agency, we are supporting a supporting system of our clients, which are service providers, to deliver that experience in that way. So we help them to choreograph their experience that they deliver. And we are going to show a case of a project here then.
Yes. So unfortunately, we cannot disclose for which client this was, but the status quo is, I think, it's a traditional problem. I think every provider has. In this case, it was regarding B2B clients, which is a bit a special case when you're talking about service design, because you're not talking only about the direct user, but also the organization these users represent. But the problem was, in the B2B sector for our client, there was a lot of clients calling in and asking about their invoice. So why is my invoice this month so high? Or how much should I pay this month? And as you can imagine, if everyone is calling your call center line, it has a very high cost for the company who was providing this call center service, but it also generates a lot of frustration for the user calling, because they have to wait for a long time. Every time they call, there's someone new coming into the line and giving them a different information. And this is really frustrating and really bad for the relationship between provider and customer. So we started to talk to our client and collaborate with them and try to reframe a bit the problem. So our guiding question was, how might we support the B2B customers to access important contract information? So not only their invoice information, while reducing the cost to serve for the business. And how we tackled that challenge was, we did a lot of user research. So we had a big qualitative research phase where we were just trying to identify who in a company calls the call center, who is responsible for the billing, who is responsible for the contracts, how do these people work, what kind of software they use, and why are they calling, of course. Like what are the difficulties and why are they choosing this path to solve their problem? We also did an analysis of the quantitative data that the client had over their online channels, because they got a lot of feedback that they were not processing. And then we said, okay, but wait, if we are talking about a high volume of people in the service center, we also need to talk to the service center employees and try to understand on their end what's going on. So we did contextual inquiry. We sat together and saw them taking the calls and answering and documenting them. And we also did a couple of co-creation workshops with them later on to see if we could redesign their process. And of course, we did a lot of collaboration with different stakeholders, because when you're talking about B2B and service, you're talking about at least 5 or 6 different product teams dealing with different digital touch points, and you have to coordinate all of them and somehow get all of them to align their strategies. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Wrong computer. After this whole research, what we found out is that there was both problems in the front stage and in the back stage of the service. So on the front stage, the customers were not really able to use the online services. First, because they had like many different portals depending on the kind of contracts they have. And sometimes you have a very big company that has 50 contracts, and then they have, I don't know, 5 different portals they have to log into to deal with these contracts. And the second problem they had is the access to these different portals is given to you by the provider. So you cannot choose your login and your password. And if you have 5 different logins to 5 different portals that you didn't set up yourself, you can imagine it's easier just taking the phone and calling the service center than trying to log in and solve your problem online. But there was also, I said, problems on the backstage. So the service center people had, I don't know, 5, 6 different applications they had to switch to between while talking to a client. So the client calls in and you have to figure out from which contract they're talking about. And you have to see if they already called before and what was documented from that call. And then you have to tell them something about the information that they're asking. And then you have to document this call and save it so that the next person can do it again. And they were just doing this switching crazily and having like their own workarounds so that they could solve the problem as fast as they could. After all this research and a lot of co-creation, we came to a couple of different solutions. So on the front stage, we have a 2-level solution, because as you can imagine, if you have a lot of online portals, it means it's a lot of work to transform them into one thing. So the first step was just creating the possibility to access all different portals under one login. So you don't have to remember anymore 5-6 different logins. They can just have the one. And over time to transition to one single online service portal. So you can just log in there and you see all of your contracts at once, and you have this one single source of information. So you don't have to call anymore to ask about your monthly invoice. You can just type in your login and see it directly. And also on the backstage, what we did was redesigning some of the applications they had and try to improve their processes. So for instance, if we could not combine the applications at one, we could at least offer an interface that showed the application without them having to switch between them. And for that, it was super valuable just asking them like, does this work? And they would be like, no, my workaround is much better than what you're planning. So that's the valuable part of bringing people to your process, right? You have like this genius idea, but it doesn't work for the way they work.
Yeah, so as also Alessandra mentioned, the project is a process now with all stakeholders, and we also found important to bring a case, but also to talk about how things are happening internally at Denkwerk as well. So if we think about the maturity, we are also experimenting with service design, and this has happened around 5 years ago or so. Now, there's this maturity model that tells a little bit the same steps that most of the organizations go through when they start applying service design internally and to their clients. And Denkwerk's right now in the middle. And we started some time ago exploring. So first was exploring service design as a new methodology. So there were people being hired as service designers, then into a digital agency. And Denkwerk's a digital agency. And then they start exploring the methods on small projects. They also start doing some events like jams, service design jams, to evangelize some other designers into the mindset. They start like a internal innovation lab to think about projects that they could do internally, and then start growing. And then they start applying into bigger projects, as the one Alessandra mentioned, with bigger clients. And now we feel that we are like in the middle, because we are now trying to scale that mindset through the entire organization. We are doing that through trainings that have started this year. We have already done 4. Tomorrow will be the 5th training. So by the end of this year, probably like around 50 people, including developers, including campaign, branding, all the departments that we have here, or disciplines that we have. And in that way, our goal is to unify our tools and methods as well. We are growing as well as a team. So if anyone is also interested on that area, you can talk with us later. And our hope is, of course, then that this becomes part of the mindset of the organization. And with that, we can provide more benefits to our clients, and having that ingrained into the company culture. So moving from this zoom of the user experience to the user journey, and then to the service experience. Now, this takes time, and we are doing that also step by step internally to make that happen. So here is just to summarize that. As a digital agency, we are shifting the mindset from this digital service to the strategy, and then to the organizational change with this tools and mindset. Here's a little bit of takeaways for you from our talk so far. So what we've tried to bring here was about the service experience. The experience goes beyond a single touch point. You should think holistically and consider the user, the business, and the organization capabilities. And service design is a mindset and a tool set that can help for you to design or redesign a service. And with that, you also then start redesigning the culture of the organization, because, as she mentioned, the organization also needs to understand that mindset. Most of the service providers still have a product mindset instead of a service mindset, which is like these principles that we explain about user-centered, sequential, and contextual, and so on. And this learning how to zoom out, also it's a multi-step journey, takes time and practice. And that is our also trigger to let's practice together. As Yuki mentioned, we brought a little exercise to do together. We are going to do a system map. So we will ask you to, for the ones that are here at Denkwerk, to meet in pairs. Maybe you do with someone that you know, maybe you do with somebody that you don't know, it's up to you. And for the ones that are at home, then you do individually. We are going to share on the chat a link to a Miro board where you're going to find the same template to use. And for the next 10 minutes, then you're going to choose a service that you either maybe are currently working on already. Maybe you are designing an application for a post office or for a telecommunication organization or energy provider. I don't know. Maybe you don't have any project on your mind, but you do your user of a service yourself, right? You go to the post office, you use the Deutsche Bahn, and other service. So you can choose either something that you work on or that you interact with, and then the idea that you're going to map together with the other person that service. And we are going to then hand over this template to you and the step-by-step of the system map. That first you identify the user of the service and then you put that in the middle. And then the second step, we have done our system map of today is user from stage and backstage. So zooming in and out. So put the user in the middle, and then you're going to start on the front stage, identifying all the touch points and players that user interact with during their journey. So all the touch points, it's a flyer, it's the application, it's the call center, newsletter, and so on. And then you try to zoom out and think what needs to be in place on the backstage for those things to happen. So for example, for a flyer, you need a printing house to deliver that flyer to your organization. If you think about customer support, you need like a script probably for the person that is on the phone talking with your user. For the newsletter to happen, you probably need a software to send the newsletter out. So you start like thinking, what are the other things that need to be in place for the touch points to happen, so that the experience of the user also happen. And then if there's a little bit of time, then you can start reflecting and putting some relationship, so these arrows around it. And if you find gaps, then you iterate and put more things on it, or take out, or move them around.
Or so this is accept that there may be gaps. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
The service you're examining has gaps.
Yeah, that's exactly why the system map is normally used for. And at first, it can be used for a way of understanding the ecosystem you're working on. So it can be a totally high-level system map, or more detailed system map, or maybe you start with the high level and then you focus. Okay, now we are going to take this part and make another system map really detailed. And as she said, then is where you actually find the gaps. And maybe then you find, oh, actually, we don't have a print house to deliver that flyer, or we have some printer house that's going to delay our folder, so we cannot release our application on time. So things are connected, and that's for you need to act on some other things that you didn't think before.